GPU prices are going absolutely crazy right now. It seems like NVIDIA is quietly quitting making gaming GPUs. What the heck is going on out there? When is it going to get better? Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. We're going to answer these questions and more in our March Q&A. We'll talk about the GPU market right now, where price is going, the 9070 XT versus the 5070 Ti and the 9070, along with are tariffs going to completely blow up the PC market? If you get value out of this video, please give it a like and of course subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows licenses and that terrible Activate Windows watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key and get a Windows 10 or 11 OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for an additional 30% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom! Windows is fully licensed for a crazy low price. And they have Microsoft Office licenses too. Use the links in the video description. All right, we got Alan Afrin. How long do you expect the GPU shortage to last? That's like the $64 million question, right? But I have thoughts on this. I'm planning to buy a GPU for 300 to 500 euros. Should they wait for the 9060 XT, or should they buy a used 6800 XT 3080 kind of thing for about 360 euros? And then we've got Ruthless Tech. When will the 50 series GPUs be readily available in stores and or for online purchases? Again, seems like the same question, but it's actually not. Let's talk about what's going on with the GPU market, because that's all that people are focused on right now, because you cannot get a GPU, right? Let's acknowledge the obvious. You can't get a GPU out there right now. The few GPUs that are out there are being scalped for insane prices. The AIBs themselves, the card makers themselves, are jacking up the prices to scalp their own cards. And then on top of that, scalpers are then buying the cards and then scalping them for even higher prices. And it just seems like we're all the way back at 2020 again, where the GPU situation just kind of steamrolled out of control. And we had for 2 years, one of the worst, and no, the worst GPU shortage that we've ever had with insane prices. I'm here to tell you, I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that's going to be the case. So let's talk about why the market is so terrible right now. There's really only one reason. I know people want to focus on, is this MSRP? Is it not MSRP? Folks, all those questions are irrelevant. We don't have enough supply in the market. Think about it like any other commodity. When there's not enough supply and then when there's a huge amount of demand, the price goes up. It doesn't matter what else you want to say, MSRP, the prices are going to go up. Who's to blame for that? Let's focus in on that, because there is someone squarely to blame for that, and that is NVIDIA. What are you talking about, Jason? Why are they to blame? They are basically quietly quitting gaming GPU production right now. Will they come back? I hope so. I think so. But right now, all the silicon that they're getting pumped out at TSMC on the 4N process, it's really a 5 nanometer process, a little confusing there, but all that silicon is going to AI GPUs. Now, that's the same silicon that would be coming to the gaming GPUs, but they're sending like dribs and drabs there because they know they can sell so much of it for so much more to the AI market than they can to the gaming GPU market. And if you don't believe me, look at their financials that they just released, about a week or so ago. Their gaming revenue is it's less than 6% of the company. Less than 6% is gaming revenue. Think about that. This is a company where it used to be 90 to almost 100% was gaming revenue. Now 94% of their revenue comes essentially from AI, or at least not gaming. That is a crazy reversal out there. And that's why a couple years ago, they rebranded themselves, said, hey, we're not a gaming GPU company anymore. We're not even a GPU company anymore. We're an AI company. So that's NVIDIA, 80% of the market, but they're supplying 0% of the GPUs. It doesn't take a math wizard to realize even if AMD doubled production, tripled production, you still have a big gap there. So AMD is actually supplying a lot of GPUs right now for their market share, but it's not enough to make up what's missing from NVIDIA. I do think NVIDIA, again, Jensen Huang, he is a founder CEO. That's NVIDIA's CEO. He's a founder CEO. He's not just some hired gun that's been brought in. He has an emotional stake in this. We've seen him time and again. He wants to win. And I have a feeling he's also going to feel like there's going to be reputational damage to NVIDIA's brand, even on the AI side. Like there's going to be questions like, if you can't supply the gaming GPU market, can you adequately supply the AI market? They don't want those kinds of questions. So I feel like NVIDIA is going to at least turn up the volume on some of the GPU supply. That's going to really, really help the market out. On the AMD side, I think they also see a big opportunity here, and I think they would be fools not to pump more in. But let's talk about when this is going to get better now. When is this going to get better? At least 2 months. from the time they manufacture the silicon at TSMC to packaging it, to getting it ready, to selling it to the AIBs, to putting it in a graphics card, to sticking it on a ship, to ship it out to the US, Europe, wherever, minimum turnaround time of 2 months. Now, AMD has more shipments already coming. I'm talking about additional shipments from NVIDIA, obviously. So AMD is going to continue to supply as many as they can. And listen, we just had this big launch where for the 9070 XT and 9070, unless you were one of those poor people out there who unfortunately got your order canceled, most people were able to get a GPU at that launch. And I have a feeling we're going to see these kind of events, these kind of stock drops where most people are able to grab something, but you're going to have to be Johnny on the spot. I know Ruthless wants to know, when am I just going to be able to buy it whenever I want? That's not going to happen immediately. What eventually it's going to look like is the overpriced models will stop selling out and they'll be massively overpriced, but they will exist. So the scalpers will begin to dry up. Once the scalpers begin to dry up, then we'll see all that kind of more middle stuff come out. It'll still be outrageously priced, but it'll be less outrageously priced than the stupidly high end. And then it'll fill in at the cards that should have been MSRP, but they'll be overpriced. And then what we'll see is we'll start to see price movement downwards as stock starts to stabilize. This is exactly how things got better in the last GPU crisis. And the last GPU crisis, the other existential crisis for us, was that we had cryptocurrency miners that were using gaming GPUs and they were buying up literally every GPU out there for 10 times what any of us would have paid for it. And so we couldn't compete with them. And that's kind of what's going on right now with gaming GPUs. But these AI companies largely don't want the gaming GPUs. They want the professional ones. It's got a lot more VRAM. There's other things about how they go together. Gaming GPUs are less desirable for them for AI purposes. So as long as we get supply into the gaming GPU market, I think things are going to begin to turn around. But again, 2, maybe 3 months at the minimum. Kneading Kitty wants to know, should they hold up for a 9070 XT or buy a 9070 and overclock or undervolt? Honestly, I don't mean to make this a trite answer, but I would just grab whatever one you can get. But if you have a choice between a 9070 and a 9070 XT, I'd get the 9070 XT. You can also overclock and undervolt the 9070 XT. I think the market for the 9070, because there was only $50 price difference in terms of the MSRP, and it's like, why does the 9070 even exist then? But what we're seeing right now is 9070 XT prices are going up much faster than 9070. Obviously, much more desirability on the 9070 XT, but the 9070s are still selling out. So if you're budget constrained, you might end up with a 9070. And of course, overclocking and undervolting, that's probably the way to go if you want to increase its performance. See if you can get one with a decent cooler. We had the ASRock Steel Legend here. It's a good model. There's a number of good models out there that are 9070s. We actually broke down every single model for both the 9070 XT and the 9070. I will leave both those videos linked down in the video description. Just go through those videos, kind of understand the models, which ones you're looking for. So when a drop happens, you're able to kind of quickly decide, including whether or not you're going to get the 9070 XT or the 9070. But just know the 9070 XT is going to outperform it because it has more compute units. JT wants to know 5080 Ti or 5080 Super timeline. Well, first of all, we're probably never going to get a 5080 Ti unless the US administration changes the AI export restrictions on things going over to China right now, because the line that they can't cross is right above the 5080. The 4090, remember, was too fast. They had to come up with a 4090D version. And that's why the 5080 didn't beat the 4090, by the way. And I told you this was going to happen long before we knew anything about these specs, because the limitation right now is political and it's also profit-based for NVIDIA on the AI side. It's not that they could make a faster GPU. Of course they could. Of course they could. They made a 5090, but they're not going to be able to send that into the Chinese market for the simple reason that it violates that AI export. Now, the administration could get rid of that. I mean, this administration is doing whatever. They could get rid of that, and that could be a thing. So then a 5080 Ti could kind of come more into focus. But let's talk about the super timelines, because every 2 years we get a new architecture, and then the year in between, we get a super refresh that started in the 20 series. We saw it with the 2060 Super, the 2070 Super, the 2080 Super, saw it in the 3000 series, the 4000 series. So let's talk about what these supers would be. I think mostly they would be VRAM based, and especially for the 5070. They will have, in quantity, I'm hearing, the 3 GB GDDR7 memory modules. So instead of using a 2 GB chip, they use a 3 GB chip. So it would take a card like the 5070, from like 12 gigabytes of VRAM up to 18. I could see them doing that and charging you another $100 for that card. And then you're like, oh, 5070 performance, but now it's got enough VRAM on it. Yay. You know, again, that card is only as fast as a 4070 Super. So do with that what you will. I think that's what the Super Series is going to be. And this is probably a little too early to fully speculate, but I could see like the 5070 instead of 16 gigabytes, what would that have then? 24 gigabytes of VRAM. Same with the 5080, that would also go to 24 gigabytes of VRAM and say, wow, look at all this extra VRAM we're providing to you. So yeah, I could see that happening. All right, Drunken Sinner, this is a great question for everybody, right? I'm looking to get your first high-end gaming PC. They've got a PC with an RX 580 and a 2600. Yeah, definitely time to upgrade. They're looking to go pre-built or custom build, but with everything going on, especially tariffs, questionable QC, should they buy now or should they wait until things stabilize? I don't know what stabilize means right now in this current environment, because on the one hand, I believe GPU supply is going to increase, especially to SIs. I think it's going to get a lot better. But we also have question marks out there on tariffs, especially if you're in the US. Let's just assume that you are in the US. Now, so far, my previous stance on tariffs was I thought this administration would do exactly what they did the first time around. They're going to make a lot of noise in the first year, year and a half. They're going to arbitrarily throw crazy numbers, 20%, 50%, 100% tariffs. And then they're quietly going to carve out either exemptions to the tariffs or waive them entirely, which is exactly what they did in the first Trump administration. And the Biden administration did the same thing, by the way. So this is not a partisan issue. This is just politicians making a lot of noise about doing something and then not actually doing the thing, because if they did, then their constituents would go to Walmart and suddenly all the TVs in there would be 30% more expensive. Their iPhones and their phones would be more expensive. And people would kind of riot over that. So I just don't see that happening. And so far in this administration, they followed the exact same playbook, which is kind of look tough, make a lot of noise, but not really follow through very much. Ultimately looking to cut some kind of deal. Ultimately, the deal that they cut with China previously was that China was going to buy another $200 billion worth of stuff from the US. And they never did that. They never did it, right? So I think they're just looking for a political win, and then they're going to move on. But if I'm wrong about that, there might be 20 or 50% tariffs on stuff. So I kind of think if you want it and you can afford it, I would probably look to buy it now, especially if you're looking to buy a pre-built as opposed to a regular build, because those pre-builts, those GPUs were sold probably long before they were sold into the DIY PC market, especially for like the 9070 XT. They're going to be sold at probably slightly more reasonable rates, but they're still getting gouged, of course. So I don't know. It's really 6 1 half to the other. Do you pay possibly 20 or 50% tariffs on something in the future, or do you just buy it now and you know you're getting scalped at least for the GPU portion of it? I would probably go ahead and buy it now, because if you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, I'd rather be damned if I do. All right, Scott wants to know, when planning a theoretical build around new hardware like the 9070 XT GPU, how do I determine what CPU-GPU combo won't bottleneck the GPU? What tools and online resources do I use to do this, or could you use to do this? Good news. We just released our best CPU GPU combo video, but it just came out literally. I will leave it linked down in the video description. Check that out. We go through builds at every budget level. We give, here's the CPUs that I would look at for this budget level. Here's the GPUs that I would consider the minimum and the maximum GPUs. Anything more than that, I would recommend going up CPU. Anything lower than that, I recommend downsizing the CPU to get a bigger GPU. And again, we have to generalize, because if all you do is play CS2 and you play it at 720p and turn it up to a bajillion, no details, and so you're getting like 1,000 FPS, then maybe I'm undervaluing the CPU for that person. But I try and take a more balanced approach, someone who wants to play a little bit of the competitive stuff, a little bit of the first-person single-player games out there that are more graphic intensive out there, Cyberpunk, Black Myth Wukong, and we balance that against the Marvel Rivals and the CS2 and the Valorant and all that kind of stuff. And I typically look at data for 1440p that's been tested out there. So that's what I'm roughly looking at when I do these. In the current generation, what I'm finding is that 9070 XT, roughly equivalent to the 7900 XTX, 9070, roughly equivalent to the 7900 XT, 5070 Ti, roughly kind of split the difference between the 4070 Ti Super and the 4080 Super. 5080 slightly faster than the 4080 Super. So it's not that hard to come up with recommendations for CPUs around this. You just have to really do a lot of work and kind of get good at spreadsheets. That's basically it. So I would recommend using the tool that I just developed, and check out our best CPU GPU combo video. Here's a great question for anybody thinking about either upgrading their GPU or buying a new PC basically, or building a new PC. RACF, anything to look out for compatibility and performance when upgrading your GPU. For example, PCIe Gen 5 GPU connector with a PCIe Gen 4 slot on the motherboard. Memory is DDR5, while GPU is DDR6 internally. Here's the thing, I know this can get really confusing for folks. So the VRAM that's on the physical GPU, and I got one right here, the VRAM's actually on this card. You don't need to worry about whether that's GDR6, GDR7, any of that. And you don't need to worry about the RAM that you have. Those are two different systems. The GPU has its own VRAM you don't really need to worry about. The system RAM is the part that you need to get right. And we have a Best RAM for Gaming 2025 video, which you can check out if you're having questions about that. In terms of upgradability, there's a couple of key things. First of all, the PCIe slot here, this is backwards compatible. So you don't need PCIe Gen 5 motherboard in order to use a PCIe Gen 5 GPU, like for instance, the RTX 5080 here that I've got just off camera because we just did our best CPU GPU and we haven't cleaned up from the combo video just yet. And yes, I did buy this, by the way, for massively overpriced sum because nobody sampled us. But if you have a GPU like this, even though it's Gen 5 GPU slot and I have a motherboard with a Gen 4 slot, don't worry about it. It's backwards compatible. It'll just run at the slower rated speed, which is Gen 4. And guess what? An RTX 5090 works just fine on PCIe Gen 4. So the things that I would think about when actually upgrading my GPU is, number one, do I have enough power to run this GPU in my existing system? Or am I going to need to upgrade my power supply? Now, there's two things. One's the total wattage, and you can check out our best PSU video, which we will update for 2025. You can check that out in terms of how to estimate your overall system consumption in there, put in all your components. And then, of course, there's also, does your power supply have enough physical connectors? This is a single 8-pin on this one. Some have two 8-pin. You'll often see it 2, 6, but plus 2 pins. That's actually two 8-pins, same thing. But you have enough physical connections for it. And then, of course, the other thing is, in your case, like this is a very simple RTX 3060 12 gigabyte GPU. It's a very small card. If I pull out some of these other cards, they're just super beefy honking things. Do I have enough clearance, both horizontal clearance or length of the card wise, and then in terms of how many slots wide it is? Some of those cards are very, very wide, and they could actually bump into the bottom of the case. So those are the things that I would think about when upgrading my GPU. Is it going to fit in my case? Do I have enough power for the card? And do I have enough PCIe GPU connectors in order to make this work? Or am I going to need to upgrade my power supply? Now, of course, the other thing that I think about is my CPU going to be powerful enough to leverage this graphics card? Or is it time to think either upgrading the CPU itself or just doing a new build because I'm at the end of the upgrade cycle for the CPU on that platform? Especially if you're on like an older Intel 9th, 10th generation. If you're going to buy like a 9070 XT or something like that, or a higher end GPU, it's generally a good idea to go ahead and just build a new system. The good news is it's never been cheaper outside of the graphics card. All the other components, it's never been cheaper to build a very powerful gaming PC system, so you can take advantage of that. But those are the things that I generally think about. John Wolf wants to know, would it be better to hunt the used market for GPUs from last gen, or just wait a couple months to see if the market's improved? Honestly, I think you're gonna be better off if you wait to see if the market improves. The last gen stuff's fine, especially, look, if you find like a 4070 Ti Super or something, it depends on how much you're willing to spend too, right? If you're looking for a used 4090, those have been scalped. Those are being scalped right now as well. They're just being sold at insanely high prices. And in fact, the entire used market, I just recently took a look. We'll take a look on our next GPU market update. Stay subscribed for that, by the way. We'll take a look at the used market, but the last time I looked at it just a week or so ago, all those cards are also trending north in terms of their price very quickly. It's having a knock-on effect on everything. So just FYI on that. So I think you're probably better off to wait a couple months, see if you can get a 9070 XT on a drop. You'll probably pay a little bit too much for it, but you'll have a GPU. And listen, the good news is, especially if you're building a system, CPUs are dirt cheap. Your motherboards are much cheaper. Like all the other components that go into your gaming PC are so much cheaper, and the prices on those keep falling. In fact, I kind of think that the fact that the GPUs out there are so in demand and hard to find, that's hurting the PC building market, the rest of the components right now. So they're having to cut prices on that. So if you're building a whole new PC out there, or maybe you're like, oh, I got an i7 10700K, Should I upgrade when I get my 97 XT? This is actually a very, very good time to do it. Check out our best CPU GPU combo video that we just released because there are some massive deals out there right now. All right, Donkey Kong, I love the name, by the way. When you're letting your cat do a parts recommendation video, maybe let the cat choose the parts and then you build the PC. They just want more cat content, great content. Keep it up. Well, thank you very much. Mr. Bear is actually not with us right now. He's outside. He is basically on strike because it's a beautiful day here in New Orleans. He wants to be outside or on the patio right now. Hopefully we will get him back in the studio shortly. I've often thought of like, wouldn't it be so funny for like an April Fool's Day video or something to, do like a cat PC build? Like, how would we even do that? If you got some crazy ideas about what we might do, leave them down in the comments. I think it would be a lot of fun. Come up with me with your ideas and let's see what we can do. If you got value out of this video, please give it a like. Of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. By the way, did you check out our best CPU GPU combo video right here? Best CPU GPU combo 2025. Check it out. And if you want to check out our video where we went through every single 9070 XT and 9070, check out this video right here. And we'll catch you on the next one.